And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Breaks Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. And Johnson, we are getting very, very close towards the end of this college football season. We are now 11 weeks through the books. We head into week number 12. We now have our second college football playoff rankings as of this week. And tonight we're going to break down those rankings while also looking back as to what happened in week 11 and kind of also talk about what these certain teams have to do in order to get to the college football playoff. We had a major shakeup in the ACC, big time thrilling matchups in the Big Ten, and a major win for a Big 12 school that puts them down into a position where they could potentially be a 1 seed, depending on what happens in the conference championship games as well. But a lot to talk about here on the show tonight.
Yeah, what do I say? You're in position to be in position.
Can't ask for anything more.
And a lot of ACC teams are unfortunately in position to be out of position, and we're going to go over that this week, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nick,
Yeah.
let's get us started.
Well, as we look at the college football playoff poll, really no changes at the top 5 of the rankings. You had Ohio State still number 1. Indiana had a big-time scare against Penn State this past weekend, had a last-second touchdown with about 30 seconds left in that game, and an unbelievable catch. Gave them a 24-20 win to survive in Happy Valley. They remain the number 2 team in the country. Texas A&M remains number 3 after their win over Missouri. Alabama remains number 4, and Georgia remains number 5. So really no shakeup in the top 5. The shakeup really happens afterwards in the college football playoff rankings. We go from 6 to 10. Texas Tech, monster performance win over BYU, pretty much dominated that game from start to finish. They are now the 6th ranked team in the country. They were that team that I was alluding to earlier that now has that outside shot of being a 1 seed, if you want to call it that way, of being hosting a second round matchup in the college football playoff, where if they win the Big 12 title game and then they have, let's say, more than likely would have to be Alabama if they make it to the SEC championship game, they lose to Texas A&M. If that were to happen, then Texas Tech more than likely would get a top 4 seeding in the college football playoff at the end of the season. So they move up to 6. Ole Miss drops a spot because of that. They are now number 7. Oregon, close win over Iowa. Looked like they were going to fall in that game, but they get a last-second field goal to hang on in that game. They now move up to number 8. Notre Dame steamrolls past Navy. They are number 9. And Texas is now number 10 in the playoffs. So if the season were to end today, Texas, who last week was the first team out of the college football playoff initial rankings, now they are one of the last teams in terms of getting in there. They would be the number 10 seed in the playoff. Other rankings we look at towards this week, you have Oklahoma moving up a spot. BYU drops down 5 spots after that loss to Texas Tech, so now they will have to do some work. More than likely would have to win the Big 12 championship. Utah not far behind them at number 13. You have Vanderbilt moving up 2 spots. And this is all due to the fact of what happened in the ACC, which we'll talk about in just a second. You had Miami, who last week was thrown out after that loss to SMU. Now they are back into the thick of things, moving up 3 spots. Georgia Tech moves up a spot. Don't look now, but USC and Michigan, they have some life in the Big Ten as well. They can maybe sneak in if those 2 teams win out to end the regular season. Virginia and Louisville both losing really bad games this past weekend. Virginia losing their matchup over Wake Forest. And then Louisville just really couldn't get anything going in their matchup. They lose as well this past weekend, losing to, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, Cal. I had to think about that for a second. They lose to California. So both of those teams now don't really have that edge. Virginia has the edge right now in the ACC because of the one conference loss. So they still have a chance to make it to the college football playoff, but Miami right now, the season were to end today, would be the quote-unquote ACC champion. You have Iowa dropping down a spot after their loss to Oregon. Pitt moves up 2 spots. They have a good shot to make it with the ACC title game the way it's going. Tennessee moves up 2 spots. And then the final 2 teams are 2 new teams in the rankings. You have South Florida in the American now having that inside edge to being that group of 5 winner to make it to the CFP. And then Cincinnati rounds it out at number 25. The only 2 teams fall off in the rankings being Missouri and Washington.
Well, Nick, that was a mouthful, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a break here.
Nice.
And and in the break, I'm gonna kind of break down the kind of your thoughts here. And so playing devil's advocate, right? Iowa still a ranked or is a ranked team, right? Iowa football still
Yes.
ranked. If they had won this game against Oregon, I mean, there is a real scenario that
Yeah, I mean,
they
Iowa
beat
has.
Indiana and they beat Oregon because they were both one score games late.
Yes.
So there is a world where Oregon is a one loss football team right now, and it's kind of crazy because
What do you
they
mean? A
both
two
had leads.
loss?
Yeah, two lost. No, one loss because they beat Indiana and they beat Oregon.
You talking about
They're
Iowa?
yeah, Iowa.
Sorry.
Yeah, because they had the lead late against
They had the lead in both games against Oregon and Indiana. They did,
yeah.
and they
So
just faltered at the end.
yeah, I mean they had the lead up, or it was a tie game up until a minute 30 left in the Indiana game, and it's obviously at the end of this game with Oregon.
Yes.
That's when they scored two. They scored with I think 2 seconds left in the clock, or 4 seconds left in the clock, or something like that.
Yeah,
So
Oregon kicked the field goal. I think there's like 5 seconds left on the game clock. There wasn't much time.
yeah, and I do like that teams are finally getting penalized for losing close games against inferior competition. Because that was never the case. It was always, oh, well, they won, so you can't move them down. And I always would say, well, yes, you can. Like, I think it's
Hmm.
dumb that you can't move them down, but that's besides the point. But now it's a trend in not only college football, but college basketball as well. So I'm really glad that they did that. Nick, if the season ended today, does an ACC team get in?
I think so. I think at the
You
end of
think
the day,
so?
there's going to be. I
Despite the
think there's
rankings,
going
do you think so?
Yeah, I think there's just. I'm going to take a look at the standings right now in the ACC because I think the only way, and they were talking about this after the poll was released. I think the only realistic way the ACC does not have a team in there is if Duke wins the ACC. I think that was the scenario they brought up on ESPN after the rankings were brought out. Because here's the reason why: Georgia Tech right now is ranked 5-1 in conference play. Virginia is
Yep.
ranked 5-1 in conference play. Pitt is ranked 5-1 in conference play. And you have to think SMU is probably right now just on the outside in of being ranked at 5-1 also in conference play.
I know where you're going with this, and before I'll just kind of get it out now. It's just like being 5-1 the ACC is like
No,
whatever. Like
I'm with you. The ACC right now does not really deserve to have a team in there. But I think the reasoning is if those three teams that I started off the thing with, if they're still ranked and they're still and they're in the conference championship game, let's say for Georgia Tech and Virginia, then they're going to get in. There's just no doubt about it. One of those two teams will get in. Now, if Duke, let's per se, wins the ACC, because here's the reason why I bring this up. Duke is 5-4 right now in the season. They just lost to UConn this past weekend, but they are 4-1 in conference play, and they have a big matchup this upcoming weekend with Virginia. If they beat Virginia this week, they'll be 5-1. Their last two games of the season, that rivalry game against North Carolina, and then Wake Forest. Those are two favorable games for Duke that they could potentially win out and finish the regular season conference record wise at 7-1. 7-1 more than likely gets you into the ACC championship game the way that it's playing out right now. Miami, I think, doesn't have a shot to make it as the championship winner. They then more than likely have to make it as one of those last teams in right now. So they have to win out and hope that one of the teams like Texas or BYU or Utah loses a game around this time period. And SMU probably has a good shot as well. But to go into the scenario that you're bringing up with an ACC not making it, I think the only team that can potentially hurt their own conference and help another conference would be Duke. So the Blue Devils could play spoiler for their own conference and help a team like James Madison, per se, or someone in the American, although the American has the inside edge right now. But a team like James Madison would be thriving and hoping that Duke wins the ACC, because then you could have two group of five winners in the college football playoff.
yeah, and I want to go over one other fictional scenario with you, and it's gonna be more towards this week. Um, Texas wins, Oklahoma wins. Do they skip any teams and make the tournament? Texas is currently the last team in, but if Texas and Oklahoma both win against at Alabama, at Georgia, very unlikely scenario, would they, let's say, skip Notre Dame? Would Oklahoma
Well,
be
I think you
in
have
over
to.
Notre Dame?
I think you have to rank both of them ahead of Notre Dame. And I
Yeah,
think what would happen is Alabama obviously losing would be a two-loss team. So they would probably drop about, let's say, like maybe 5, 6 spots because that's what they did to BYU this past weekend. And if you're Georgia, they're the exact same way. They would be a two-loss team. So I look at it like this. Let's say that hypothetical happens. Top three stay the same. I would say Texas Tech moves to number 4. I would then say Ole Miss and Oregon are the next two teams. So 5 and 6. I think Texas would be 7, Oklahoma 8, Notre Dame stays put at 9, and then probably Bama's 10, Georgia's 11. That's probably what the rankings will look like next week.
I will agree with you, but I will say the mental gymnastics are crazy with Texas Tech because they don't have an impressive win all year. I can't
Right.
name a single memorable Texas Tech win.
Because
I do remember they did lose
in their
it.
competition.
Yeah, I know, but they lost to a mid Arizona State team, which we know would be bottom of the SEC, probably 11, 12, 13. And I don't know, it's just kind of crazy if the Big 12 is going to get
Yeah, I
like
mean the
one
best
person
two
in.
wins, of
It's like
course, are their own conference wins against Utah and BYU.
I
And the
really
thing
hope
that's
they.
helping
I
them
really
right
hope
now
that
is where
for
they're ranked.
maximum chaos, I really hope that happens. I hope the ACC loses that, and I hope Texas Tech loses at West Virginia, and then they lose the title game. I hope that's the
They lose to
scenario.
West Virginia. That's bad.
Well, it's at West Virginia,
I
and
know West
you
Virginia.
know
I know they've won
they're
two
not really
straight.
that great. Listen, West Virginia is not that great, but they've put up competitive games.
I mean,
They
Texas Tech.
they put up
No, I know.
they,
I know.
they beat Pittsburgh and they gave BYU a run for the money. So like they can put up competitive games.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at it this way, for Texas Tech, they have two scenarios where they could be a top 4 team and finish the season with getting that first round bye. It's the scenario that I brought up where if they win out, they win the Big 12, and then let's say the top 4 stay the same, and they're going to obviously play each other in their respective championship games. Bama losing their game against Texas Tech would make them a 2-loss team, and that would put Texas Tech as number 4, so they would get it that way. And if not, it would be the scenario you just brought up where Bama and Georgia, let's per se, both lose this week to Texas and Oklahoma. Then it shakes up a lot more as well. So they have a shot. I get it. They haven't really had an impressive resume. I know that their best wins are against their own conference opponents, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's the same thing. Big 12 is, not a lot of people are too impressed with the Big 12 teams, but that's why I liked.
I want to
one
live
of
in the world with
Yeah.
a point 0.0001% chance where the American and the let's whatever conference James Madison is in,
the Sun Belt.
the Sun Belt, get bids to the college football playoffs, and the Big 12 and the ACC don't.
So
I want to
can
live
tell
in
you
that world.
this. I do have a predictor. If you want to give me like a team, and like say,
Yeah,
what
I
they would
hear
have
you.
to
I
do.
think we could do this all day. Let's not
We
kind
still
of
have a
dwell on
bunch
this
of
for
weeks
the
left.
the
We still have a
listeners.
bunch of weeks left in the season. And again, we have a loaded slate this week where a lot of this could be changed up. We have all that chaos in the ACC. If South Florida loses the Navy this week, then does Navy have the inside edge? Does James Madison have the inside edge of being their Group of 5 winner? We talked about the Duke scenario already. And then you have games like Iowa USC, which might not seem like a game that means something for the college football playoff, but it's pretty much an eliminator game for USC because they still have an outside edge or chance to make it to the CFP. I can explain that later, if anything, in the mushing hour. But there's a lot of big games this week that going into next weekend when we talk about the next rankings in the CFP. I think it's not going to be as clear as it is at the end of the season, obviously, but I feel like we're going to get a little bit better of a picture because you're going to have these games with Bama and Oklahoma, Georgia and Texas, and then you're going to say to yourself, okay, we saw what happened with these two games. We now know where these teams are ranked. We now obviously know what the scenario has to be for these certain teams to get into the CFP and what they need to do to avoid any mental collapse where they fall out of it and they miss the entire thing itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this, Nick. I think with the college football playoffs being right here, I think we can go straight into the mushing hour now. I don't think there's really anything else to cover unless
the only thing I'll bring up is the potential matchups that would happen. Let's say the season ended today. Obviously, the top four being the same, they all have a bye. So the Ohio State game in the second round, they would play the winner of Notre Dame and Oregon, that being the 9-8 matchup. Indiana is still the number 2 seed. They would take on the winner of Texas and Ole Miss, the 10-7 matchup. Texas A&M is the number 3 seed. They would take on the winner of Miami and Texas Tech, that being Miami, of course, if they were to win the ACC, which doesn't seem too highly likely right now. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the last matchup would be 4 seed Alabama taking on the 12-5 matchup, which is South Florida and Georgia. So lots still to be determined in the next couple weeks. It's going to be a very, very interesting next couple weeks to see how this all unfolds. But as you mentioned, Johnson, let's go into the Mushing Hour for week number 12.
And we have an absolutely loaded schedule here late in the season, but we're going to start off with some kind of slow games in the ACC and some big, non-Power 5, non-Power 4 schools. Let's start with Clemson at Louisville. Louisville is a 3.5-point favorite at home, over underslate at 51.5. I'm taking Louisville minus 3.5 this game.
I am with the chaos right now. I would actually take Clemson plus 3.5.
I am definitely with the chaos, and but I don't think Clemson will win this game.
I don't know if they'll win it. I can see them maybe covering and lose by a field goal. I look at it like this. It's really tough to trust any of these ACC schools right now.
Nope.
Like, this conference is wide open. It is wide open. Even the 2 lost teams, Louisville and Miami, right now they don't look like a surefire to get in there, but they still have a chance to get it into the CFP. I'll give Clemson the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they get inspired and maybe they give Louisville a run for the money. It's a Friday night game. You never know what happens on Friday night. So I'll take Clemson to cover the 3.5 in that game.
Stranger things have happened before.
Our next game, we go into a big matchup in the American. Number 24, South Florida, taking on Navy. Is South Florida a road favorite in this game? 9.5-point favorite. 65.5 is the over-under. No, that is not a typo.
I wanted to believe in Navy, but give me USF minus 9.5 of the chaos scenario. So keep it alive.
I think the problem for Navy is that we don't know the stats of Blake Horvath, their star quarterback right now. That is a big reason why they have no
but it's the Navy. It's not like they're running
Yeah, but what I mean is,
they'll figure it out. Is what I'm
their
trying to say.
Their offense would look a lot better if Horvath was playing right now.
I agree.
And if they can get him back for this game, I mean, that's a major get for them, because this is obviously the game. This is the game of the season for both these teams. It's an eliminator game. We always like to say that when it comes down to the late in the season. Is 65.5 too crazy to take the over? Is that a crazy over I take in this week?
Listen, I haven't taken an over under all year, and I'm 13 games above 500. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I might be 15 games under. I had my first positive week probably in, I don't know, months, maybe. I want chaos. Give me the over. Why not? I don't care. What have I got to lose at this point?
So, speaking of chaos, Nick, we have number 19 Virginia on the road going into North Carolina, take on Duke. Duke is a 4.5-point favorite at home, over underslate at 58.5. I'm sticking with the chaos. Give me Duke right now. Give me the Duke Blue Devils to cover this game, minus 4.5.
Yeah, I hate this spot for Virginia. They're going to lose. Duke, I think that possibility of Duke making the ACC title game is very realistic. I feel like last week was a look ahead spot when you lose to UConn. I think they get right. They win this game. Virginia looked really bad last week, and they might not have their starting quarterback Chandler Morris. So I will take Duke in this one minus 4.5. I'm with you on that pick as well. Our next matchup, we go into the Big 12. TCU at number 12, BYU. BYU, a 4.5-point favorite. 52.5 the over-under.
BYU minus 4.5. It's going to maybe put a damper in the chaos scenario because it leaves the door wide open for a second Big 12 team. But give me BYU minus 4.5. I can't see them losing at home to TCU.
Yeah, I mean, they can't afford it, obviously. They lose one more game, they're done. We'll see what their injury status is. They had a couple of injuries going into that Texas Tech game that realistically gave them no shot. I'm going to take them as well. It's a close game right now. It looks like, at least what the experts are saying. But I'll go with the Cougars in a bounce-back spot where they're trying to get an opportunity to get revenge on Texas Tech in a potential Big 12 championship matchup later on in the season. What do we got next?
Next game we have is number 9 Notre Dame at number 22 Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, despite being the home team, Notre Dame is a 12.5 point favorite. 55.5 is a slated over under. Notre Dame to cover minus 12.5.
I mean, from the comments I've seen from Pat Narduzzi going into this game, I really don't have any faith in Pitt winning. They have basically said this game does not matter. And that's exactly what he said. He literally said this game does not matter because Pitt still, it's not a conference game. And it's not going to hurt Pitt in terms of the rankings because all they need to do is just make the ACC championship game and they'll be fine. Because of that loser mentality comments, I'm just going to take Notre Dame to cover the 12.5. I would love to take Pitt until I heard the comments this week. So I expect a big game out of Jeremiah Love again. I'll take the Irish minus 12.5 in Pittsburgh this weekend. Our next matchup, pretty much an eliminator game for the Trojans of USC. They're home taking on number 21 Iowa. USC a 6.5 point favorite, 49.5 the over-under.
Give me Iowa plus 6.5 for some chaos here. They're going to cover.
I'm going to take the under in this game. I think we're just, it's simple strategy. You have an Iowa defense that's playing good. They just shut down Oregon last week. I don't expect USC to put up too many points in this game. I'm not certain. I don't really have a good read of who's going to win this game. My best read is just taking the under for this one because of the Iowa defense and what I've seen in years past with them. So I'll take the under. And for USC, like I said, they can't afford to lose this game. If they win this game, then they put themselves in that spot where if they beat Oregon, they can make the college football playoff at the end of the year. So they really need to find a way to win this one. What do we have next?
We've got number 11 Oklahoma at number 4 Alabama. Alabama is a 5.5 point favorite. 45.5 is the slated over under. Give me Oklahoma plus 5.5. I think they're going to win this game.
Ooh, you're embracing the chaos in the SEC,
all
though.
For chaos.
Okay.
Well, I figure Alabama can lose the game against Oregon, and they're going to win the Iron Bowl in the game against Eastern Illinois. Even if they don't make the title game, they're still going to make the playoffs. So, for me, Oklahoma needs this game a lot more than Alabama. Alabama can miss the playoffs. Miss the title game.
Yeah, Bama's a two-loss next 2 weeks. They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. So Alabama has some room. They kind of know that. So who knows? Crazier things have happened. Oklahoma's playing for their college football playoff hopes, so they need it.
I don't really have a good read on Oklahoma either. It's been so tough to read some of these teams this season because a couple of weeks ago we watched that game against Tennessee and they didn't look great in that game. And they still won despite the fact that their offense looked really bad. Their defense pretty much carried them in that matchup with the Volunteers. They're going to have to carry them in this game against Alabama. Bama did struggle last week against LSU, so that's probably a bit of concern for the Tide going into this one. I'm still going to take Alabama to cover the 5.5. I just don't really trust the Sooners' offense right now, which is why I'm leaning towards Bama in this game. I think they get a get-back game offensively against what arguably people have been saying has been a pretty good, solid defense all year round. I think the Tide get the job done. They win this game and really put Oklahoma on the ropes. A 3-loss Sooners team might be the end of their CFP hopes just because of who they have left on the schedule. They don't play a ranked team to end the season. So they, as you mentioned, they need this game, but I don't know if they get it. So I'm going to take the Tide 5.5 in that matchup at Tuscaloosa. Then we rounded out Johnson with number 10 Texas going on the road to take on number 5 Georgia. Georgia a 5.5 point favorite, 48.5 the over-under.
So this is a tough game for me to pick because on one hand, I really think Georgia's going to win this game. But on the other, Texas is playing for their playoff hopes. And I think Texas can lose this game. And if they take care of business against A&M, which is easier said than done, they'll make the playoffs.
Right.
But to ignore all that noise, they're going to win this week at Georgia.
Ooh.
And they're going to waltz into the playoffs, losing to A&M in week number 13, in the final week of the season. That's not counting 14, the conference championships or the Army Navy game. So, give me Texas plus 5.5.
Yeah, I'm with you because they have a different scenario than Oklahoma because Oklahoma, like I mentioned, doesn't play anyone ranked at the end of the year. They play Missouri and LSU in their final 2 games. But for Texas, they have that game against Texas A&M where if they were to lose this game, they have to obviously win the game against A&M. If they win that game, I think they more than likely get in. Even though they're a 3-loss team, I think just because of them beating an undefeated SEC team is more than likely get you into that spot. So I agree with you. Even if they lose, I think they still get in. I'm going to take the over for this game just because of how bad the defense has looked for both these teams at times and points in the season. I do expect a high scoring matchup between the two. I'm really torn on who to pick in this game. I think Georgia does win at the end of the day, and Texas beats A&M at the end of the season, but we could have a lot of chaos, as you mentioned earlier on. There could be a bunch of different scenarios that we go into next week when we recap the rankings and then break down the matchups and then look forward to next week as well, going into week 13. We're almost at the end of the season. About 2 weeks left in the regular season for a lot of these teams after this weekend.
Crazy to think about it, right?
Yeah, it felt like we were just starting the season. And for a lot of teams, they're playing their third to last game of the season. And like I mentioned, I mean, we don't really know. In my opinion, there really isn't a dominant team probably outside of Ohio State at this point right now.
Yeah, I would agree
just because some of these teams have had right. And as much as I don't like to say it either, it's more of some of these teams, like let's say like Indiana and A&M again are undefeated, but they've had those games where they've looked a little bit scary. A&M had that game against Arkansas. Indiana, we just saw it with Penn State. That's what I mean when I say that. It's like Ohio State hasn't had that spot this season. They had the one close game with Texas, and that's about it. Knowing them, they're probably going to struggle with Michigan to end the season because that always happens, it seems like, these last couple seasons. So I expect them to get through the next two, and then they play Michigan on the road. And yeah, it's going to be potentially more chaos that weekend too. Can't wait.
Always never a dull moment in college football, right?
No, there is never a dull moment. We almost had, like I said, almost had some crazy upsets this past weekend that would have shaken a lot in the polls because Oregon might have been a team that gets knocked out completely. Indiana could have fallen to 12 or something like that. And the ACC, as we saw it, got shaken up to a point where now Miami, they're saying right now has a chance to get in, but I still don't think they are the team that gets in unless they are one of those, quote unquote wild card teams like we talk about for baseball. Like they would have to be one of the last teams in to get there. They're not going to win the conference championship just because of all the one-loss teams ahead of them. So I'm looking forward to see how this all plays out, Johnson. Any final thoughts you have before we wrap this one up here tonight?
No final thoughts, Nick. You can just take us home.
All right, I will indeed do that. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. We are 11 weeks into the college football season. We now head into week number 12, another loaded slate going into the weekend. What will happen in the ACC for certain teams like Louisville and Virginia? We'll have to see what happens with them. A big matchup of the American with South Florida and Navy. And then you have the other big matchups on Saturday. Iowa, USC, Notre Dame and Pittsburgh, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Texas and Georgia. We'll have to see how this all unfolds, and we'll recap it here next week, as well as recapping the next CFP polls that will be released on Tuesday night. For Nicholas Pavona and Andrew Johnson, this has been the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.